My whole ethos is pushing culinary aspect of veganism to like new levels and like places we've not been before. This is my life. I love this. I love cooking and I love pushing the realms of what food is. What I do is not food anymore. It's so much more. I want a restaurant that's an experience. Like I don't want to be serving food. I want to be serving stories. There's a whole realm of fine dining that vegan food currently isn't in. And that is the experimental, fun, crazy, wacky, nostalgic storytelling. I want to experience that. I want to do that. And I want to push the boundaries.
Hi, so welcome to the Viva podcast. Thank you for joining us. Today we have Liam Penn, who is a Michelin-trained chef who makes beautiful plant, well, I haven't actually eaten any, I will admit, yet, but makes beautiful plant-based fine dining dishes. Is that how you would describe it? What's your sort of opening spiel?
I call it edible storytelling. So for me, it's about food and stories and like where they come from and using a narrative to tell those stories. But yeah, it's fine dining for sure. And then it's usually around 9, 10, 11 courses. Around that, depends on the menu. But yeah, I think it's a really fun way of telling stories and food together. I think it's really important. So yeah.
Awesome. Okay, nice. Well, we'll dig more into that. But firstly, wanted to get a bit of background, who you are, where you came from, your story going into hospitality. How did you start? Where did your love of food come from?
So I grew up in Western-super-Mare, and then I worked for a few local restaurants, and then my mum was a fantastic cook, but she liked following recipes. And I think that I was probably quite mischievous as a kid. So I was the kind of kid who would be like, "Mum, why can't we do this? Can we put this instead?" And I was quite experimental with how I cooked. So I went to France and I worked for a bit in France, and then from there onwards it was like I want to be in the fine dining world. And there was a real drive. I was brought up vegetarian. I went vegan later in life, but I really wanted to change the veggie vegan food scene. And in terms of like what veggie vegan restaurants were serving at the time, I felt like the options were quite limited, and I really wanted to push the idea that veggie vegan food could be fine dining. Yeah,
something more than a bean burger.
Yeah, definitely. So I went to work for Vanilla Black in London. It's a really renowned restaurant, vegetarian restaurant. And after that, I went on to L'enclume, which is in the Lake District. So it was a 2 Michelin star, now a 3 Michelin star restaurant. I worked for Simon Rogan there for 2 years. And then after that, I went on to work for Heston Blumenthal, the crazy science chef at the Fat Duck, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Bray.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, quite the experience, quite the
I've done the circuit. I've done the circuit of the fine dining restaurants. So yeah.
Yeah. So you grew up vegetarian, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you start thinking about veganism? When did that come into play?
I think as soon as like I was able to like have semi-adult discussions with my parents. I think about 6 or 7 years old, I said to my mum, "Why are we drinking dairy?" And she was like, "We just do. That's just the way it is." And I think that there's a whole world of discussions that suddenly opens up, and the world of veganism was quite hard to get into in terms of like accessibility. Back in the early 2000s. So I think that the journey towards veganism was started at like 6, 7 years old, just because I was already veggie. And then those questions already appeared.
The curiosity of like, wait a minute, this doesn't quite
add up. So I feel like the journey towards veganism was like a slow but really consistent. I think I always wanted to go vegan. It took a while, I think that natural progression. It does happen, and I think as a chef, it made it easier to be vegan, because it's like I think there's a whole world of like untapped resources in vegan food that you can why would you need to cook meat or fish? Why would that need to happen? So I think once I was able to set up my own business, that was it. That I could be vegan and I could push things in my own directives.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask about when you were going vegan. At what age were you already working in hospitality, working in kitchens when you were going vegan, or were you already there? Did that affect like your work? Was it a positive thing or a negative thing, or did it?
Yeah, I think there was a big taboo against vegetarianism and veganism, definitely, in the world of hospitality. In like 2010, when I was a chef, 2020, working for other people, it was hard.
Yeah.
I think I was definitely, it made me work harder.
Yeah.
Because I was seen as an outcast or not good enough because I was veggie. So I think that I finally made the jump when I left the world of other people's restaurants and I set my own thing up.
Yeah. Do you think was veganism one of the main reasons you wanted to jump out, or there are other things as well?
Yeah, no, I think my whole ethos is pushing veganism, the culinary aspect of veganism, to like new levels and like places we've not been before. So I really want to like push that.
Yeah, really cool. So when you finally left other people's restaurants, what was that like? How did that feel? Like, did it feel freeing or did it feel slightly terrifying, or both?
Yeah. I think it was always because I knew from when I started getting into cooking, I wanted to own a restaurant.
Yeah.
Like that was the direction that I wanted to take things.
Yeah.
So like I think it was always going to happen.
Yeah.
I never stayed at restaurants long enough to like work through the career ladder. And I never wanted to. I wanted to work for the restaurants I worked at to learn as much as I could, and then from there use those skills to push my own direction.
Yeah. So when you were working with, so you worked with Simon Rogan and then you worked with Heston Blumenthal.
Yeah.
What, I'm sure you get asked about it all the time, but what was that experience like for you? Were they very similar? Were they very different?
Polar opposites.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simon Rogan was all about like farm to fork. They had a farm attached to it. And there was like loads of foraging involved. I think it was just a really fantastic experience. It really kind of like, they both shaped how I cook today, but in two very polar opposite ways. And that whole like farm to fork, serving things natural as they are, is something that I brought forward. And then the fat duck for Heston Blumenthal, it was the polar opposite. Everything had to be, there had to be like a scientific basis behind everything. And you weren't working with raw ingredients anymore. You take raw ingredients and you try and transform into something else. Yeah. And I think that sort of journey between the two polar opposites, I tried to forge them into one in terms of,
Yeah, that's really cool. So the working with Simon Rogan and the farm to table sort of thing of growing all of your own produce, you've started doing that yourself now?
Yeah, so I've got my own little plot of land where I grow my veg and fruit and herbs for the events. It just allows so much freedom in terms of when I pick the ingredients. I can pick them at their best. So like, if I want to do a dish on snozzcumbers, then I grow marrows, and then I weigh into the marrows are really thick and long and large, and they have thick skins, and the seeds are really thick in the middle, and they're inedible essentially. I take that ingredient, and then you wouldn't normally be able to buy those things in a supermarket like that, but I can use the flavours that have happened through that extended growing period and use them in the dish how I want to, and manipulate them to my advantage. Yeah. Whereas you wouldn't normally be able to do that if I didn't have the little plot of land that I'm growing stuff on.
Yeah, it's a whole different opportunity when you've got complete control over the whole process.
And like the freshness as well, it's just incredible. Like there's a whole, as soon as you pick a fruit or vegetable, the starches, the sugars start turning to starches, and that journey just carries on going. Like with every hour, it changes. So like it means that I can go to the little plot of land and pick my stuff, my vegetables, my fruits, and use them directly straight away, or serve them that day. And it's just like such a freeing environment, and that you get the ingredient at its best quality. Yeah,
that's really cool that you're able to do that yourself, and you do that in Bristol here.
I do. Yeah,
so cool. So you mentioned snozzcumbers.
Yes.
So I wanted to come back to that for those who might not know what snozzcumbers are. I have to say BFG was one of my favourite books as a child, so snozzcumbers really stick in my imagination. But bring us back to that, the storytelling, where snozzcumbers come from, where this idea is.
So I think that when I grew up, my parents read me lots of books, and they were all really creative books, and Roald Dahl was one of those authors, and he had this way about wording ingredients and making up those ingredients, and I've worked on that as a principle of what I do, is to take those literary devices and snozzcumbers, for example, in the BFG, they're meant to be disgusting and horrible, and they're meant to be these just inedible things. Yeah. So I take those principles. I tell the guests that the ingredients, how disgusting they are, and then they get to eat it and it's delicious. So I think that's a real journey to go on. Yeah. And I think that there are so many stories that have food involved.
I think Roald Dahl especially has such strong descriptions. Like, I could list it all in my head so easily of food from all of his different books, because it's just that capture of the imagination with his descriptions, isn't he? Yeah. Like
the James and the Giant Peach. Roald Dahl writes it in a way that you imagine yourself as James. And there's a giant peach, and it grows from a bag of magic beans that grow that get poured onto a dead peach tree in the garden, and that peach grows giant, and James kind of crawls through this peach, and as he crawls through it, it squelches, and he tears bits off the walls and eats them, and it's such a visual audio thing that happens when you imagine that. You can imagine a soft juicy peach. For me, it's I can imagine picking the inside of a wall of the peach, and biting down on it being juicy and dripping and sickly and sweet, and and the way that Roald Dahl wrote those books,
it still brings it up, even though I haven't read them for so many years. I can still picture it in my mind immediately. So when you're taking inspiration from something like that, like Roald Dahl, what's your process? Do you reread the books and then just go in the kitchen and see what happens, or what's your process?
It's hard to describe because it depends on the story, or it depends on the menu that I'm doing. But generally, I work backwards. So whereas most chefs they take an ingredient and they go, I want to work with strawberries, and I want to work with sweet Sicily, and they'll put a sweet Sicily and strawberry dish together, and that'll be the dish. Whereas I work backwards, so I'll go, what's the story I want to tell? And for example, if it's Roald Dahl's books, I'll take Roald Dahl's books, I'll read them all, and then I'll be like, okay, this is the stories I want to tell. I want to tell Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I want to tell James and the Giant Peach. I want to tell the BFG. And then from there, I read those books and I find the quotes that are going to work, and I find the stories that are going to work from those stories, and then I make the dish around that. So, for example, James and the Giant Peach, like we said earlier, because he's walking, it's squelching and it's soft. The most recent way I served the peach for one of my menus was that it was a soft, juicy sorbet, and it kind of when you pushed into it, it kind of squelched. And I think that representation happens backwards. So I don't say I want to work with peaches. How can it be a peach? How can I make a peach dish? It's the other way around.
It's the story first.
The story first, which is I think a lot of chefs find hard to do it that way, because it's you're forced to then be creative in a opposing way. But for me, it's I have so many experiments going on in the kitchen that there's always an ingredient to play with. There's always an ingredient around.
There's something to find.
Of course.
So that's really cool. So we talked about Roald Dahl. What other menus have you done recently? What are your favourite inspirations that you've pulled from?
Oh, there's so many. So I've done a historical menu. So we did edible histories, where I went to the Bristol Archives and I went across old recipes and I turned them into dishes, and I tried to be as historically accurate as possible. We did 10 different dishes throughout the years, from prehistory and then all the way up to modern day. That was a menu. It was really fun to do.
That's amazing.
The moment I'm cooking a great British animation. So all the fantastic animations from when we were kids. I think that there's so much food in them as well. Pingu. Pingu has so many misadventures, where he bakes cakes and they explode. Popcorn goes everywhere. Wallace and Gromit, the moon made of cheese.
You don't think about how much food is in everything, especially these kids things where it's that imagination of those.
Yeah, and then the nostalgia in those are just really a really fun thing to play on with an audience. It's really, with guests and diners, it's a really fun thing to have a nostalgia element.
How do you decide where does it just sort of happen? Or, Yeah, does it just come across something and then you think, oh, that could be something, and then it just builds?
Yeah, I think the Great British Animation Menu, I was working on for 2 years before we released it. So sometimes they take a while to grow into something. Some of them come really naturally. I do a Christmas menu, and I use a lot more nostalgia rather than literary devices or visual devices with that one. And it's like, what dishes would I have had growing up? Like I said, my mum was a really good cook, so it's like, what plays can I do on that? What plays can I do on, like, everyone has an argument at Christmas. Like, so I think like a Christmas argument dish is one that I work on every year, or something goes wrong at Christmas.
Yeah.
Everyone has that story about something that went wrong.
Yeah.
They forgot an ingredient, they forgot to put the oven on. Like, I just feel there's so much to happen. And then the same with I do a Valentine's menu called The Perfect Date, and we go through good dates and bad dates, and like there's so much. Our life as humans revolve around food. So like everywhere I look, I see inspiration.
Yeah, that's really nice. So obviously now that you're a one-man band pretty much, plus Sarah, I assume. How does the process go from when you've started developing these ideas, you're getting dishes together, when you actually decide to put on an event? What is the process like, and what are the events like? Because I've actually never been to one, and most people listening probably haven't either.
Yeah, so I think from start to finish, it's really hard to put a time scale on it, but like this Great British Animation Menu, I feel like there were so many animations I wanted to do that I started off with 20, and I was like, I can't do a 20-course menu. So we kind of like narrowed it down to 10 over 2 years. But some of them come like overnight. Sometimes I'll wake up and be like, I've got to do this menu. I'm so excited. And it'll be like 2:00 in the morning, and that's it. I'm writing a menu, and it's just, it happens creatively just at once. And then I can have the dates released for the tickets almost immediately. Like it just happens overnight. And it's like, that's it. I've got a new story to tell. And I want guests to come, so I release dates for these events. And essentially, once I've released dates, I then draw on what I have in the kitchen, what the story is going to be, what stuff is like fermenting and going on in the kitchen, what I'm developing currently. So sometimes like it'll be new things that I develop, but sometimes like I'll have like a barrel of something really cool going on. I'm like, I can use that in this dish. And that might have started like a year ago, or it might have started 6 months ago.
Like, yes, that thing I did a year ago was useful.
So my kitchen is literally just, my prep space is just full of barrels, jars, stuff fizzing and bubbling. But yeah, I kind of delve into my cupboards and pick out what I use the menu, design the menu, and then like on the evening the guests arrive, and then I talk for every dish. So like every dish, I'll tell the guests what ingredients I've used, where it's come from, why I've used it, and then I also tell the guests the story. And then it's like really quite fun for me. I'll serve each course with the guests. I'll cook it in the kitchen, and I'll serve it, and then we clear it all together, and then I'll then start the process again. I'll tell the guests the next story they're going to go on to. And as I'm doing that, I get to walk around and I get to hear tables talk about their own memories attached to these stories. And that's the fantastic thing about doing the edible storytelling, is that I get to hear the guests' stories too, and like what their memories are.
What it's bringing up for them.
Exactly. And sometimes it's really niche. But sometimes it's like, yes, that's exactly how I imagine them to. Like they're eating things how I saw them in my imagination when I wrote this menu, and it's just such a really fun thing.
Yeah, there's a really nice like round circle to come back to people eating it and getting the story from eating it, and you being able to be like, yes, that's what I meant for you to experience.
Exactly.
Thank you. I can imagine things like the Christmas argument dish might bring up some interesting conversation.
Sure, like people always, and it's like for me, it's such a pride of what I do to be able to hear these everyone's personal stories that are attached to the dishes that I cook them. And it might remind them of something that they've not remembered or thought of in like 20 years, and then suddenly that memory is alive for them again. And they get to share that with whoever they're eating with, and then perhaps they'll share it with me or like the table next to them, and it's like I'm tapping into those forgotten memories that people don't really realize they have. It's just and it's like, it's not, at that point, what I do is not food anymore. It's so much more. Like it's just such a
Yeah,
nostalgia.
the food brings the connection and the conversation
Yeah,
and the
of course,
nostalgia
yeah.
and it builds all of that. That's why it's in all of these stories, because we can all relate to it and we all, feel it rather than it being separate to us. That's really nice. I'm really looking forward to coming to one soon, hopefully.
I have to invite you.
Yeah. I don't have any ulterior motives, I promise. I promise. So you've got some events coming up this summer, is that right?
Yeah, we've just released tickets for this summer. I'm mainly at the events in Bristol, but I've also got a date in Bath. We're going there for a quick little holiday.
Nice.
I'm joking, it's not a holiday. We're all working holiday. I think that
that's a chef's holiday.
Yeah, chef's holiday.
Going somewhere else to cook.
Yeah, for me, like I this is my life. I love this. I love cooking and I love pushing the realms of what food is, especially vegan food. Like I think it's like such an untapped resource, like I said before, of fruits and vegetables and just so this is the just released tickets for the new menu, and they were in June, July, August, and they're live now on my website. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
We will put the links in the things, So maybe we can talk a little bit about veganism and plant-based cooking and how that developed for you. So you obviously said you worked in lots of non-vegan places before when you were already vegan.
Yeah.
Did you find you were able to still take inspiration, take learnings? Like, how did that translate into then being able to cook your own plant-based stuff now?
So, like, for example, with ice cream, I don't use eggs and I don't use dairy, but I still make ice cream. And the reason that I got good at making ice cream is because I learned along the way that ice cream is actually just a set of ratios. It's a set of sugars and fats, and that's what makes good ice cream.
Yeah.
So for me to then use that knowledge that I learned with eggs and dairy and translate into a vegan world where we're using fats and oils and sugars instead, it's a really accessible tool to use. Is to use the science from, well, just the science of cooking.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be dairy based. You can make it as long as you know the science behind it. That's cool. And what's your reactions that you find when are people like amazed that you can do this with plants, or like people, what sort of reactions do you get?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. Most of the diners that I get, they think it's the first time they've eaten a vegan meal, and sometimes they don't realise when they book it and get to the end of the meal and they turn around and go, oh, we didn't eat any meat or fish today. And I go, oh no, you didn't. And then they also don't realise that they've not eaten eggs or dairy or butter or any of the other ingredients as well. And I think it's such a rewarding feeling, is to be able to cook for people, and them not to realise that. I mean, why should they realise?
To not see it differently.
Not to see it differently and to see it as what it is. And I think that people often overcomplicate what a vegan food is. It's just food.
It's
just food.
There's still a lot to play with. Yeah. So we've obviously touched on quite a few dishes already, but this might be a really hard question. What are some of your favourite dishes you've ever developed, or some that you were most proud of when you came to the serving of them?
I think the dishes which I'm most happy with, or like the ones that I think are the most fun, are where the ingredients truly relate to the story. In Fantastic Mr. Fox, one of Roald Dahl's books, Fantastic Mr. Fox goes to the farms and he steals produce, and the farmers are all hunting him and he's like evading them, he's burrowing tunnels, and at the end they have a big old feast, and at that feast they eat the produce they've stolen from these farms. And I did a dish in Fantastic Mr. Fox's perspective, and it was a little apple tart, and I think it was really just delicious. I put some smoke in there. We had like a lot of like fun flavors going on there, and the really fun bit was that the apples themselves, to relate to the story, I stole them. So I went at 1:30 in the morning with my partner, and we went to a farm, and the farmer never picks the apples, and we went and hopped over the fence.
Yeah.
Took a sack with us. We stole the apples, and then the guests for the whole menu get to eat these stolen apples.
That's amazing.
And it's like it's actually from the perspective of Fantastic Mr. Fox. I get to be Fantastic Mr. Fox, and I get to steal the apples for the dish, and the guests get to eat stolen produce.
I love that. There's that extra layer of mischief under the story.
And I think there's I try with every dish that I do, for every ingredient that I use has to have a reason behind it. Like the dishes are so thought out that I'll steal the apples from them.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a really fun dish that I enjoy at the moment. I think it's really tasty on the Great British Animation menu. And it's Wallace and Gromit, and it's the animation where they go to the moon, they take a holiday, and they eat moon. And I think that the moon is made of cheese in this story. And for me, that was such a fun dish to develop because there's such a when Wallace digs into the moon, he spreads on a cracker and then he eats it, and it's gravelly. So that I know that the dish that I create has to be gravelly. Yeah. And then he also says,
and you can hear it as
well. You can hear it,
yeah,
of course, yeah. And then the other thing that happens is that he says, it's like no cheese I've ever tasted before. And for me, that opens up a whole world of possibilities. So for that dish, I take potatoes, I culture them with...
I didn't expect you to say potatoes.
Yeah, I take potatoes and then I culture them with Penicillium camberti. And Penicillium camberti is the white mould that grows on brie and Canberra. So I take that mould, I grow it on the potatoes, and then I make essentially a potato croquette with really crispy, crunchy, gravelly potato on the outside. It's hard to imagine it, but yeah, I think...
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty perfect description. That sounded delicious.
So for me, that's moon cheese. That's what the cheese is made... That's what the moon is made of, is potato cheese.
Potato cheese.
That's gravelly and crunchy.
Who knew? You heard it here first.
Heard it here first, yeah, for sure.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I love fermentation at the moment. Whether it's like pickles or like lactic fermentation, or like for me the new thing is like working with cultures. So Penicillium camberti, Penicillium roqueforti, so the blue mold that grows on cheese. Using those cultures and then culturing my food with them. Yeah. Like if it relates to the story, like it's fantastic. Yeah.
That's like you're getting really sciencey and really like. But I can imagine the things that you can create when you're starting to get that deep into that level of whatever words you just said that I won't try to repeat, where you're creating things that nobody's done before. Yeah. Does that feel like awesome?
Yeah, and it's being able to give people a flavour they've never had before.
A cheese that he's never eaten before.
A cheese that no one's ever eaten before. So
really coming together, I see it. That's really cool. So when you talk about like fermentation, is part of that, I mean, from my experience, fermentation is, some of it's about, using up what would otherwise be waste and trying to, be sustainable in that way. Does that come into it at all?
Yeah, for sure. I think throughout the year, I keep all of my vegetable trimmings. My traditional French cooking, you keep your vegetable trimmings, your garlic skins, your onion peel, your tops and your tails, your vegetables, and you put them in a pan, you boil them, and then that's your stock. So instead of doing that, I take all my vegetable trimmings, I add salt to them, and then I ferment them, and then I use that fermented vegetable trimmings to make my stock. And what that does is it adds acidity to the stock, which like opens up a whole new level of palate kind of taste. And then it also adds umami, which is like a real like savoury touch that you wouldn't get if you just boiled the vegetables, if you just boiled the skins and vegetables. So I think there's a whole like no waste ethos that can bring flavour to dishes. If I'm using like herbs in my dish that I grow, then I'll pick the herbs and I'll use the herbs, but then I'll also try and find a use for the stems and the roots of the herbs, and using that whole like plant. Wow. Because I've grown it, it's really important.
Yeah, you're like, I can't throw away any.
And there's just so much flavour and texture that we just don't use in these vegetables. And I think that, or herbs, I think there's just, so much to play with.
Yeah. So I've heard rumours about the Valentine's menu. I've heard many things in the Viva office. So would you tell us a bit about your Valentine's menu? Any interesting dishes on there? Yeah,
I think that I'm quite open. I met my partner Sarah, and we spoke about her a little bit today, but on our third date, she invited me around to cook for her, and I was like, great, it's all going so well. I'm a chef, and I was like, bigging it up, I'm a chef, and I can cook this dish for you. And I cooked a risotto, and I did some like nice bruschetta. And it was all going so well, but I burnt the bruschetta, and it was like not just like a little bit black. It was kitchen full of smoke black.
Yeah.
And I think I told her that I was this fantastic chef.
Yeah.
And I'm not that kind of person, but I think I just used that as like a.
This is your talking point.
This is
is
my
being a
talking
chef,
point. Yeah, it's my life. So I told her all about my life, and then I couldn't even make toast. So that I use that memory and I use that story and I tell it and I cook it into a dish, and we do like a burnt toast risotto, and I tell the guests about things that go wrong in dating. So yeah, that Valentine's menu is about things that go well and things that go wrong. Like everyone has that dish at home which they can't cook, or a story of a date that went bad.
Yeah.
And like it's so nice to be able to hear those stories from people. It might be that the waiter brought you the wrong drink.
Yeah.
It might be that you had a good time, but like perhaps the waiter brought you the wrong bill when you ended up with a cheap meal. Like I think that there's so many stories to be told just in dating and romance, and yeah, I feel like being honest and like open and using experiences as a tool, it's just
Do you, when you're making dishes around like actual experiences, do you ever go around to your friends and collect and say, what's happened to you on a date? What can I take from that? Or is it all your personal like experience?
Yeah, I use people. It's not just my experiences. It's people around me. I had a waitress once, and we were designing the menu for the Valentine's menu, and I said to her, what's the worst date you've been on? And she said he turned up and went straight to the bar, ordered a really large pint of bitter that like had a really strong nasal smell to it. And he ordered some pickled onions, and he sat there scoffing the pickled onions and drinking the drinking the ale. And I think she was just repulsed by that.
Yeah,
and I think it was a really bad way. Yeah, it was a really bad way. And I think that the day didn't work well at all. But I turned that into a dish as well.
That's so good.
And I do a pickled onion soup, and it sounds disgusting, but it tastes delicious. And then I pair it with like an ale foam, and the ale foam goes on top, and like the whole two elements that you just wouldn't want to start a date with.
Yeah.
I give to the guests.
I love the idea of one of your friends turning up to one of your tasting menus and being like, wait a minute, I remember this is bringing something back to me. And you're like, oh yeah, you remember that thing you told me 3 years ago? Yeah, that's this.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Awesome. So did you want to talk a bit about your wine?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So like a big chapter of a big thing of what I want to do next is I tell the stories with the food. But I also want to tell stories of wine. And I feel like humans, we've been making wine for centuries, but we kind of stopped at grapes. And I feel like there's so many ingredients to play with, fruits, vegetables, the lot, that we can use in winemaking instead of the grapes, that have like an attachment to the story. So yeah, it's a big thing that I'm developing at the moment. It's not yet been released, so don't get your hopes up. But like it's a rolling progress, and I think that using ingredients that you wouldn't normally find that relate to the story, it's a really fun way of doing it. So I do a dish on Paddington Bear, and next year I'm hoping to have a wine which is made out of marmalade and toast.
Whoa.
So then
have you ever made wine with grapes, or did you just skip that completely and go straight to marmalade?
I skipped it straight away. I started making wine when I was like 15.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was awful, but no, I spent most of my school years writing business plans to open a winery. Like that was but yeah, it was always a passion of mine. So yeah, I've made wine for years. I've made wine with grapes. I have once, twice. But I just feel like there's so much.
But yeah,
Especially
it's been done. It's been done.
And also when there's a reason to do it. Mm-hmm. Like why, if you're eating Christmas pudding, why don't you drink a wine made from Christmas pudding? Why don't you pair the two together? Like why when you're eating snozzcumber soup, aren't you drinking snozzcumber wine? I don't know, or Frobscottle. Yeah. Frobscottle. I think Frobscottle was one that I'm really excited to try and develop. And Frobscottle, for those of you who don't know, is from the BFG. Basically, it's a green liquid, and you drink it, and the bubbles go down rather than going up.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm working on at the moment is carbonating a Frobscottle wine and making the bubbles go down rather than up.
I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. Just Turn it upside. Yeah, no, I've got nothing. I don't think I'd be much help, but I'll taste it. You know, I can do that bit.
So yeah, I actually have some wine here for you to try.
Ooh.
So this is the stuff I'm developing at the moment. This is marmalade.
Smells
So it's a
delicious.
dessert wine. I make a marmalade and I stew it for 6 hours, and then we let it down with a little bit of water, and then we ferment it as if it were grapes.
Mm-hmm.
We pulp it, mash it, strain it, and then
Do you stand on it with your feet or no?
No,
Is that nothing anymore?
no.
Okay.
That's
I still would have drunk it, but you know, just check.
yeah.
Ooh, that's delicious. So sweet. Ooh.
Yeah, so
That's
you can
really
get like the
nice.
bitter elements from marmalade. Because marmalade has like a really specific like bitterness to it that you kind of only get from the rinds for the orange. Yeah.
We can just sit here in silence for a minute whilst I drink that, if that's okay. No, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Are you just making that yourself, just
Yeah.
casually? That's, well, maybe not casually, but yeah, that's delicious. Thank you for letting me try.
Thank you.
Hopefully other people will be able to try it soon, but for now I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about one other of your menus that you actually did for Viva for our 30-year anniversary last year.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, we unfortunately I wasn't there, but you know, I'm not bitter at all, it's fine. We hired out a boat and we had our big 30-year anniversary celebrations, and Liam, you did all of the cooking.
Yeah.
Did you want to talk a bit about that menu, what that was like?
Yeah. So we did the secret garden, and it was kind of like I think it was the start of when I started designing my little plot of land, and like I used that inspiration to make a dish for Viva, and there's so much like that goes into the little farming procedures that I do, and making stories out of them, and I thought it would be a great way to serve it to Viva. And we did 6 courses, which was a bit smaller than I normally do, but it was for 120 people, and it was on a boat on the Thames. What I didn't
Not
expect,
complicated
not
at all.
not complicated at all. Normally I cook my meals for like 16 to 18 people. It's a really small thing to do. Jump up to 120, completely different game. Yeah, and it was 6 courses on the boat. And what I didn't expect to happen was that the Thames was quite choppy that night. So we're on the boat, and I'm cooking, and I've got a soup on, and the boat is like rocking, like this, and then the soup is going like this, and like for my whole culinary career, I've never cooked on a boat. So I just didn't anticipate that
Yeah, you didn't think about it until you're there.
Yeah, and like just the small things like the oven doors, like you'd open an oven door and you try and reach something, but like the door would shut, and like there was a whole new field of play to be had with serving that meal. But it was a really fun night. It was a really fantastic like celebration of like Viva's 30 years. I just think that it was a real privilege to do. So yeah, I really enjoyed that night.
Well, that's really nice. I'm really glad that you were able to do it. I'm obviously sad I wasn't able to eat it, but you know, I've had very, very good reviews from everyone at Viva, so thank you.
We brought on trees to the boat. Like I served one of the courses on trees.
Oh wow.
One of the things I didn't expect was that to get the trees on the boat, I had to like walk the trees around the edge of the boat, and like we nearly lost a tree into the Thames. But yeah, as the guests came in, all the tables have trees on them, and it was like that was the first course to open up with was there's a tree on the table.
Just
and the leaves were
the
edible.
classic way to open a meal, tree on the table.
The leaves were edible, so like the guests didn't realise, but as I introduced the first course, I was like, your leaves are edible on the trees, and then it suddenly made sense. Everyone was like, that makes sense. Let's grab some leaves and eat them. But yeah, to get trees onto a boat is actually much harder than.
Yeah, I can.
I mean, someone could have
imagine,
told me that, but I just didn't. I didn't think that was going to be a problem.
Yeah. Once again, when you're used to not being on a boat, then suddenly you're like, all of these things I have not anticipated. Well, I'm glad we could facilitate you having that really fun sounding new experience. Awesome. Well, to wrap up, I wanted to maybe ask you about the future, your future plans, and if you have any interesting thoughts about the future of plant-based cooking, where you think it's going, what your part in that is going to be.
I think for me in the future, like I want to carry on doing the pop-ups. I think it's a really fun way to integrate the storytelling that I do on a really personal level to people. And the next step for me is to open a restaurant. I'm not there yet. Like I don't have a timeline, but that is always the progression. It's like always the goal was to open a restaurant, and I think that's something that I'm really working hard towards at the moment. I really want it, and I don't want to just open up a restaurant that sells food. It has to be something more.
Yeah.
Like I want to go for the 2 Michelin-star restaurant. I want a restaurant that's an experience. Like I don't want to be serving food. I want to be serving stories, and I want. I just feel like there's so much to play with. Perhaps the guests turn up, and it's a bookshop, and they have to like find a certain book to get in, and I don't know. There's so many.
There's lots of ideas.
There's so many. Or perhaps if we go down the route of like the guests have to climb through a wardrobe to get in. Like perhaps it's
Narnia style.
Narnia style,
like
yeah.
it.
Perhaps that happens. But yeah, I feel like there's so much fun to be had, and I don't want it just to be a restaurant.
Yeah.
Now it has to be the whole thing. It has to be like an experience.
Yeah.
And I think that what I want to push with vegan food is that there's a whole realm of fine dining that vegan food currently isn't in, and that is the experimental, fun, crazy, wacky, nostalgic storytelling. I want to experience that. I want to do that, and I want to push the boundaries.
I look forward to seeing it. I mean, that I don't want to serve food. I want to serve stories. That's fantastic, and I'm really grateful to have you on. And thanks for chatting to us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we'll look forward to coming to some of your events. We'll put all the details in the description, whatever we call it.
Yeah.
And hopefully some of our Viva viewers will be along to try some of your delicious food.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Gary, you got to try this. This is delicious.